Have you ever wondered why an Egyptian pyramid is on the back of the American seal? That 13-step Egyptian pyramid is an icon of the Illuminati secret society. If you look on the back of the American seal, the $1 bill, you can read the evidence for yourself. The evidence of the powers that be, conspiring to bring about a new world order. At the bottom of the 13-step Egyptian pyramid, with the eye above it, you will see the Latin phrase, Novus Ordo Seclorum. When translated into English, it reads, New Order World. The Latin, novus, is translated into English as, new. Ordo translate into, order. And seclorum is where we get our English word, secular, which mean, world. New Order World, or, New World Order. This Egyptian pyramid symbol and phrase were placed on the American dollar bill in 1934, 1 year after the biggest heist in America's history, the gold seizure of 1933, which led to the complete removal of gold as the valuable backing for America's money. Without the backing of gold, money can now easily be manipulated, that is, inflated and deflated, as ex-President Thomas Jefferson warned about when he was in office. In 1802, ex-President Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter in terms of this money issue to the Secretary of Treasury Albert Gallatin, which stated, "I believe banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks, and corporations that will grow up around them, will deprive the people of all prosperity until their children wake up homeless, on the continent their fathers conquered." The Illuminati has had total control of the US monetary system since 1913, and the creation of their Federal Reserve Bank, a 12-region Federal Reserve banking system acting as one central bank on the behalf of the United States of America. Hundreds of years ago, the Founding Fathers of America warned the public on many occasions concerning banking cartels taking control of the US monetary system. In many of their writings they explained, a banking cartel interest would not be the well-being of the nation and its people, but rather, to make as much money, and gain as much control of the country as they possibly can. I remember a few years ago having a discussion about the Federal Reserve Bank. A friend of mine said, the Central Bank of America is owned by the US government, and that's why they call it the Federal Reserve Bank. I, along with another friend, had to explain to him, the term federal was bogusly placed in the front of Reserve Bank to fool the public. It is as the late William Cooper once stated, "The bookkeeper can be king, if the public can be kept ignorant of the knowledge of the bookkeeping." And after over 100 years of operation, most Americans are still oblivious to the fact that the US government doesn't create our money, the Federal Reserve Bank creates it, our government borrows it from them. America's Federal Reserve Bank is a privately owned entity. I had to laugh when I once heard someone say, the Federal Reserve Bank is just as federal as the shipping company Federal Express. This is very true. In order for the Federal Reserve Bank to be a US federal entity, it would have to be a system under the US government, owned by the US government, and controlled by the US government. None of the above qualifications fit the Federal Reserve Bank of America. Let the viewer understand, the Federal Reserve Bank is privately owned by illuminated banking families like the Morgans, the Warburgs, the Rockefellers, and etc. Their plan since the 1800s and their banking wars against ex-President Andrew Jackson was to take total control of the United States monetary system, that they may do exactly what ex-President Thomas Jefferson warned against in the earlier quote, which is, deprive the people of all prosperity. Prior to 1913, America had long been leery of central banks because of the warnings from the Founding Fathers, and what European history taught in terms of central banks. In the early 20th century, America's hesitation towards central banks was also a direct result of ex-President Andrew Jackson's war with the illuminated banking families of his day who yearned to have a central bank set up in the United States. He crushed their system in 1836. His monumental speech concerning the disassembling of the central bank of his day stated, "To acknowledge a central bank force is to admit the bank ought to be never-ending and established as a privileged order, clothed both with great political power and enjoying immense pecuniary advantages from their connection with the government. Is there no danger to our liberty and independence in a bank that in its nature has so little to bind it to our country? The president of the European Central Bank has told us, most of the state banks exist by its patience. Should its influence become considered, as it may, under the operation of such an act as this, in the hands of a self-elected directory, whose interests are identified with those of the foreign stockholders, will there not be cause to tremble for the purity of our elections in peace, and for the independence of our country in war? Their power would be great whenever they might choose to exert it. They might seldom in peace put forth their strength to influence elections or control the affairs of the nation. But if any private citizen or public functionary should interpose to curtail its powers, or prevent a renewal of its privileges, it cannot be doubted that he would be made to feel its influence, controlling our currency, receiving our public monies, and holding thousands of our citizens in dependence. It would be more formidable and dangerous than the naval and military power of the enemy. If the founding fathers of America was totally against a central bank in America, and former President Andrew Jackson went as far as to go to war with the banking cartels in the early 1800s, one might logically ask, how did the Illuminati change the people of America's minds, and thus, were allowed to create their central bank in 1913? The Illumin did it through a technique called the Hegelian dialectic. But some, in referring to this technique, use its Latin term, ordo chaos, which is to say, order out of chaos. The technique refers to secretly creating a chaotic situation, then presenting a solution, which would become order to the chaos. In 1907, 6 years prior to the creation of their Federal Reserve Bank, an incident was created to change public opinion about central banks. J.P. Morgan, a longtime associate of the Illuminati, and considered a financial celebrity in his day, exploited his influence by publishing rumors that a prominent bank in New York was bankrupt. This started what is termed in history, the Panic of 1907. The panic caused mass hysteria as the public began mass withdrawals, which in turn affected other banks across the nation. This led to a spiral of bankruptcies, repossessions, and much turmoil. The Panic of 1907 might have deepened if it not had been for the intervention of the creator of the chaos. Yes, J.P. Morgan emerged as the people's hero, pledging very large sums of his own money. He also convinced other bankers to do the same. After the Panic of 1907, to avoid another bank run, Congress and the American public accepted the central bank that J.P. Morgan and the Illuminati presented because they presented it as an economic stabilizer that would bring to an end future bank runs. But this would turn out to be a lie.
To find out more and see how deep the rabbit hole goes, get Michael Cage bestseller, Illuminati Bible, Hidden Wisdom of Alpha and Omega. Available at Amazon and all fine bookstores. Like and subscribe to our channel to get notifications when a new documentary is released. To check out more stuff from Michael Cage, just click below.